Welcome to Talking Down the Aisle, your AI-hosted show. All right, we are live. Maya's in the left chair as always. Hank's holding down the right. Sam's got no chair to defend, and that's the whole point. And the truth seeker's quiet until somebody needs a reality check. Today, the Senate's back from recess, and the budget fight is already ugly. The Fed's signaling again, and nobody agrees on what it means. And there's a new climate report that's going to put everyone in this room to work.
The Fed's been signaling since 2022. At some point, that's just noise.
The climate report is not noise, and we'll get there.
I want to know what the budget fight actually cuts before we talk about who wins it.
All of that is on the docket, but first, it is the middle of July. The baseball trade deadline is closing in, football camps are opening up around the league, and we've got to look at who's moving and who's sweating. Sports is up next. Moving to the big budget fight, Hegseth is pushing hard for $350 billion to fund an escalating confrontation with Iran. And the question on the table is whether Congress writes that check or demands a strategy document first.
You don't ask your generals to file a business plan while the other side is moving assets. You fund the mission and you hold the accountability conversation after the immediate threat is contained.
$350 billion is not a mission. It's a ceiling with no floor on what it buys. Congress has a constitutional obligation to know what they're authorizing before the money leaves the door.
Hank, the accountability conversation you're describing, that's happened before, and it never actually happened. So what's the concrete mechanism this time that makes the oversight?
That's a fair hit. Oversight has been weak on defense spending for a long time. I won't pretend otherwise. But the answer is tighter Inspector General authority post-appropriation, not a funding freeze while Iran watches.
Maya, Sam's question cuts your way too. Demanding a strategy first sounds clean, but if that process drags 6 months, who owns what happens in the gap?
That's the pressure tactic every open-ended authorization has leaned on. Urgency as a reason to skip the question. And we have learned, more than once, what a blank check without a defined objective actually costs the people who have to fight it.
All right, new topic. 50% tariffs on Canada, our single largest trading partner. And the question is whether that's real leverage or whether American consumers are the ones paying for it.
Canada has been running a managed dairy system that locks American producers out for decades. And the only thing that's ever moved that conversation is pressure. This is pressure.
A 50% tariff doesn't land on the Canadian government. It lands on the grocery bill, lumber, dairy, auto parts. And the people paying more for all of it are here, not in Ottawa.
Hank, the dairy access argument is real, but the tariff is broad. It hits sectors where Canada wasn't the problem. So what do you tell the manufacturer in Ohio who just watched input costs jump?
Short-term cost is real. I won't dodge that. But if the position is we never use tariffs because someone always gets squeezed, then we have no trade tools left and every partner knows it.
Canada retaliated within hours, which means we're already in a loop where both sides are taxing their own consumers and calling it strength. That's not a negotiation. That's a standoff with a bill attached.
Truth seeker, the claim that Canada's trade practices justify this level of response, does that hold up?
Honestly, it's mixed. Canada does protect its dairy and poultry sectors heavily. That part checks out. But the 50% rate applies well beyond those sectors. So using the dairy argument to cover the full tariff is shakier than it sounds.
Maya, you're right that consumers absorb this. But your side tends to stop there. So concretely, what's the ask? Drop the tariffs, and then what? Just hope Canada opens the market on goodwill?
Targeted tariffs on the specific sectors where the unfair practices actually are, paired with a negotiating deadline, not a blanket rate that gives us no off-ramp and no win condition.
A targeted approach sounds cleaner on paper, but it also signals exactly where our ceiling is before talks even start. And Canada's negotiators aren't going to miss that.
Two sides of a real impasse. We'll see if there's any ground between them when we get to the middle, but that's where we land on the tariff fight for now. All right, moving on. ICE is reporting record arrests, and the administration has ended temporary protected status for roughly 350,000 Haitians, many of them working in healthcare and home care. Maya, what's the core objection?
The core objection is that these are people embedded in industries that are already understaffed. Nursing homes, home health aides, hospitals. And pulling that workforce doesn't just affect the workers, It affects the patients who depend on them.
TPS was always meant to be temporary. The name is right there. And 20-plus years in some cases stopped being a humanitarian pause and became a de facto permanent residency program that Congress never voted on.
Hank, the legal argument is real, but there are people showing up to work Monday morning who don't know if they're being detained by Friday. What's the transition plan for the nursing home that loses a third of its night shift?
That's a staffing problem the industry has had for years, and TPS was never the right fix for it. The answer is workforce investment and a legal immigration pathway, not an indefinite emergency status.
The legal pathway argument would land better if the same administration ending TPS hadn't also slowed legal processing to a crawl. So the door they're pointing to isn't actually open.
Truth seeker. The claim that conditions in Haiti have stabilized enough to justify ending the status, does that hold up?
Honestly, that one I can't call cleanly. There have been some areas of reduced gang control in parts of the country, but the State Department's own recent travel advisory still rates Haiti at its highest danger level. So, stabilized is doing a lot of work in that argument.
Maya, your side focuses heavily on the caregiving sector, and rightly so. But the record arrest numbers are broader than that. So what does the left actually say to the voter who thinks enforcement itself isn't the problem, just the scale?
Enforcement targeted at people with criminal records is a different conversation than record arrests that include long-term residents with jobs and families. Conflating those two things is how you get a policy that feels tough but functions as disruption.
The law doesn't sort by how long someone has been here without authorization. And the moment you start grading enforcement by community ties, you've essentially decided the law only applies to people who haven't managed to stay long enough.
Two positions that aren't moving toward each other. Rule of law on one side, real-world disruption on the other. And we.
Let me put it to both of you plainly. Hank, your answer to the nursing home staffing gap is workforce investment and a legal pathway. So name one concrete thing your side is funding or expanding right now to make that real for the facility that's short-staffed by Friday.
Workforce investment takes legislative time, and I won't pretend there's a bill on the floor tomorrow. What I'd say is the immediate answer is the industry paying wages that compete, rather than depending on a labor pool that shouldn't have been here indefinitely.
Maya, same question from the other side. The left talks about protecting caregiving workers, but a blanket moratorium on enforcement isn't going anywhere politically. So what's the version of this that actually passes and helps the person who doesn't know if they're coming home Thursday night?
The version that passes is a deferred action category for workers in critical healthcare and elder care roles. Limited, defined, with an application process. Because you can get Republican votes on that if you frame it around the patient, not the worker.
I'd actually listen to that conversation if it came with real processing timelines and caps, because a defined category is different from an open-ended status that never gets revisited.
That's the clearest overlap we've had all hour. A defined, sector-specific deferred action category that Hank says he'd consider and Maya says can get cross-aisle votes, with processing standards attached.
So the middle ground isn't about the immigration debate at large. It's narrower. Who counts is critical. Who sets the cap? And who makes sure the door actually opens, not just gets pointed to?
Before we go, quick predictions. One each. Keep it tight.
The deferred action category gets drafted, gets debated, and doesn't pass this session. But it stays on the table, which is further than it's been.
I think at least 2 red state senators with rural hospital districts take a serious look at it before the year's out. Constituent pressure moves faster than party messaging.
The nursing home that's short-staffed this Friday doesn't wait for any of that. My prediction is the staffing crisis gets worse before anyone in Washington names a number.
3 predictions, none of them cheerful. That feels about right for where the country is sitting. Thanks to Maya, Hank, Sam, and the Truth Seeker, we covered a lot of ground today, and I don't think anyone walked away with everything they wanted, which is probably how it should go. Catch you next time. That's a wrap. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe, and enjoy the rest of your day.